Well, I want to welcome everyone here today. This is part of my Leadership Legacy Summit that will be in June. And today I'm honored to interview Lyn Stoner. I'm going to give you a brief bio and then we're going to get into conversation with some questions. So Lyn Stoner, founder of Seapoint Center for Collaborative Leadership, is a consultant, speaker, and co-author with Ken Blanchard of the international bestseller Full Steam Ahead, Unleash the Power of Vision, translated in 22 languages. Over the past 25 years, Jessie has worked with hundreds of leaders using collaborative processes to engage the entire workforce in creating their desired future. Her clients range from Fortune 500s to not-for-profits worldwide. Named as Inc. magazine's top 50 leadership expert, which is wow, amazing. American Management Association's Leader to Watch and recipient of the Conant Leadership Champion Award. She writes an award-winning leadership blog and has been featured in Harvard Business Review, Huffington Post, and Forbes, among others. So today we're going to be talking about how to create a vision that will guide us in an unpredictable world, and the world now is certainly unpredictable. In fact, I can't believe how fast things have changed in such a short period of time. So welcome, Jessie.
Thank you, Jann. Happy to be here.
Well, one thing that I wanted to say right off at the beginning is I've used your book, Full Steam Ahead. I've used it in workshops. I've used it in my leadership courses. Now I'm teaching a graduate leadership course. I've shared your blog. I follow your blog. It is award-winning. I mean, it's very, what I like about it is well, first of all, you're very focused, and which sometimes I'm not so focused on my blog, but you're very focused. It's very clear, and honestly, I will print it off and share it in workshops. So, your name and logo and everything's all over it. So, in fact, I'm going to be interviewing Wally Bach next week. Mm-hmm. Wally likes to pick your blog as one of the favorites of the week. So right away, that's an honor. So that's great. And I like Wally too. So, well, let's start off with your book. Share with us the main ways having a vision improves our life and our work. I mean, I think at this point in time, lots of people are going to be struggling with that. And so let's just start off with your book and then we'll get into current times.
Okay, great. Vision, it's interesting to look at what's happened with vision over the years. In the 90s, it was a buzzword. And then it became kind of like, the vision thing, and people stopped thinking about it or paying attention to it. And yet, the research shows, and we know, that when a group of people share a vision, there's a tremendous amount of energy that gets released, and people feel empowered, they feel powerful, they are motivated, they have a perspective on how they can make a contribution, so they're not just passengers on a bus. They're proactive. When they see something needs to happen, they do it because it's their vision, not somebody else's vision. And they're cooperating and coordinating so much better with each other because they see how they're all a part of something that's larger. So I think what's happened is that there's been a shift in short-term focus. And with that shift, we're missing out on these kinds of benefits. These smaller entrepreneurial companies that are, the new tech companies, small groups of people do this naturally, and it just happens, and they share the vision, and then they grow to a certain point and they get frustrated and they have all kinds of problems because it's not a shared vision anymore. And so there are ways to make sure and create a vision that everybody shares. And I think these smaller companies, as they're looking at growth, really need to think about how do we communicate and create a vision that isn't just ours, but is actually held by everybody.
Right. Talk a little bit about the value of vision for our life. I talk about life vision and why that's important, but I want to hear your perspective. Yeah.
I think some people think that a vision for your life is that I'm going to create a map of what I'm going to do, and it's a checklist, and they can get themselves into big trouble. And this is where it really goes to understanding what are the key elements of a vision, because the word is used so much, and there's so many different definitions. So let me go real quickly into what I mean when I say vision.
Right.
What a vision does is it illuminates your underlying purpose and beliefs and values. So it's not just a picture of where you want to go. So you've got to be really clear about what your purpose is and what are the values. In our book, Full Steam Ahead, we say that vision is knowing who you are, where you're going, and what will guide your journey. And who you are is your purpose. Where you're going is the destination, which is the picture of the end result, and what will guide your journey are your values. So when you're creating a personal vision, you really need to take a very serious look at who are you? What do you stand for? What do you care deeply about? Who do you want to be in this world? And so as you get more clear about that, how you will do it isn't as important. It's putting the cart before the horse if you start looking at the how without first looking at the who am I? And then what are your beliefs? I mean, if you have self-limiting beliefs and you've got little messages and tapes going on from childhood saying that you can't do certain things, you're going to be confined in your vision. And so you need to really examine your beliefs and see what's real and what are just ideas that you may be carrying over that don't really make sense anymore. And then you expand the scope and grandeur of your vision, and your values are what guides your journey. And we all have values. If we can really look at them and articulate them, we can examine them and really choose them consciously and then act on them consistently. And if we can do that, then look at the picture of what does it look like when you are fulfilling your purpose and living your values. And then you have a vision for the future. And I encourage people to be very detailed when they go into it. Not necessarily, like I'm going to marry a person and have 2 children, or at least think about that as more symbolic, which means I'm going to be involved in a long-term intimate relationship. But the more you do it, and also it's not the process to get there, because you don't actually control everything that's going to happen between now and
Right.
moving forward. But what is the end? What is the destination? What's the end result? And then when opportunities come, you can make intelligent choices as you move along the path. Right. And the other thing that I tell people when they're looking at a personal vision is it's not, well, I say this for groups too, it's not a once and done. I created my vision and now I'm living it, because it's an ongoing process. And as you move forward, your vision actually becomes more clear, and you say, oh, well, that's what that was about. That's why I said I wanted to, marry somebody. It was actually, I wanted intimacy in my life. And so there's another way to have this intimacy. So you don't get locked in to things. You look at the vision itself becomes more clear, and it's exciting as you see what it, as I, at my age now, as I look back on my life, I see a straight line. I didn't see that straight line when I was younger. I can see how everything has led up to the point where I am right now. But at the time, it was like, those are choices that I'm making along the way in the context of who am I? What do I care deeply about? What do I believe about myself? And what would it look like if I was living that?
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I think that's one of the advantages of experience, life experience, because I agree with you. I'm amazed at how the pieces are kind of fitting together for me. And I would not have, I never thought of it as a straight line, but how they make sense now, I think that's great, Jessie. Well, maybe you explain this, but I know you told us about the parts, and that's great, because purpose, values, and vision, but how do we go about creating this, either for work or for life? I'm sure you have a process. Now, I know your book's great and you blog about these things, so I do want to remind people to check out your blog on Seapoint Center for Collaborative Leadership. But do you have a process? Or
Well,
you could explain quickly. I mean,
yeah, there's the first step is you really need to understand the definition of vision. And I went through it very quickly, and
yeah.
I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it here, but really also understanding the difference between a vision and a goal. A vision is not a big goal, and goals are milestones that you set along the way. So as circumstances change, and we can look at what's happening right now, for example, the trajectory between where you are now and your vision, the goals that you had along that line, we've been knocked off course. So rather than trying to go back and accomplish our goals, we need to take a look at the vision and where we are now and set new goals.
Right.
So I have a problem with yearly goal setting, because I think goals need to be examined and reset, first of all, more regularly, but also when events happen, that's when we need to reset goals, not just yearly.
Right.
I think we need to re-examine our goals and see if we're still on track and on course, because that's important also. So the process to create it, and I have some guidelines also that if you're to keep in mind as you're creating, but the process to creating it, and Jann, I've looked at yours, it's very similar to yours, and it's not a rocket science here. It's, clarify the vision, and the issue is, can we identify a vision that actually contains all three of these elements of a compelling vision? That's really important. So I have some guidelines for creating the vision in the first place. And then the second is to then take a clear look at where are you right now? Because if you can't hold both of those, then you're in danger of either pie in the sky, la la land on the vision with no reality, or you're so stuck in reality that you can't hold on to your vision. And then you're just, stuck in the mud. So, what I think of it is that you hold both, and then what happens is that tension is generated. And I know you talk about this also, so I'm just going to repeat this anyway. There's it's a law of nature that there's a tension between current reality, and your vision, and the law of nature is that tension seeks resolution. Robert Fritz wrote about this in The Path of Least Resistance, but it's a scientific principle. And if you, what we do is typically we feel that tension, and tension makes us uncomfortable. So we start to go, well, the vision really wasn't realistic, and I really didn't want it. And there's something else that can satisfy me, and I'll be happy. And we've reduced the tension, but we've also reduced the vision and the scope and grandeur of it. So we have to understand that this is actually creative tension. It's the grain of sand in the oyster. It's the force that actually, if you hold on to the vision and you're also realistic about what's happening right now, tension will seek resolution, and your present reality will begin to shift in favor of the vision as you make intelligent choices as you go along the way. And I appreciate what you're saying. Looking back, it wasn't a straight line, because we do zigzag. And
sure.
and as as this tension is seeking resolution, we're adjusting as we go along the way. So the second step is to be absolutely realistic about current reality. And then the third step is to set goals along the trajectory. But as I said, be willing to adjust your goals as current reality shifts. Because if current reality now is over here and my goal is here, and I start going this way, I'm now focused on my goal, not my vision.
Great. No, that's excellent. I like that metaphor. It kind of reminds me of that expression, if you can see it, you can believe. No. If you see it, you can be it.
Okay. Yeah.
Something like that, that
Yeah.
if you really can see yourself doing that, then you can rise to that level. So, well, that's a perfect kind of segue into, let's talk about the current reality. How has the pandemic changed your work, or how you think about your work?
I think what's happening is that we've been thrown into reactivity. I mean, it's so unpredictable, and we don't know what's going to happen next. And that people are, I see two things happening. I see a lot of fear state reactivity occurring, and we can look at the tension that's generated between people that want to reopen the economy and people that want to stay home safe, and there's anger and frustration coming out of all that, and I think that's coming out of a fear state. And then the other thing is I also see happening is a lot of kindness.
Yeah.
People being concerned about those who are struggling now, and what can we do to help. And we see that every day. Like, if you go out to the grocery store,
Yeah.
you'll see both.
Yes,
Absolutely.
Right.
And but I think both of those things are really more around a short-term focus, and so we're in danger of what I was talking about earlier, of becoming more and more anxiety bound. I think people are watching the television way too much because this is not breaking news. It's not a hurricane that's going to hit the house in the next hour that you need up to the minute news on it. I mean, we do need news, but there's a point where you become oversaturated and it just increases anxiety. And I think there's a lot of that because of the unknown. So what it means is, and this is where I'm talking with people when I'm especially at an individual level, is take a deep breath. Let's go to what's really important here. Let's go to, who are you? What are your values? Because I think most of the people that are operating in a fear state are in reactivity and not living according to their values or their vision. And and this is around, we're going back to the guidelines for creating your vision, which is moving. One of them is be proactive, not reactive. A vision needs to be about what you want, not what you don't want. A vision needs to be about where you're going, not winning or beating somebody else. So, all these visions about being number one or beating the competition, that doesn't really guide you into the future, because what happens after you win? Okay, well, now what? So,
I just got done reading Simon Sinek's latest book, The Infinite Game. Have you had a chance to read that yet?
No, I haven't.
Okay. Well, it's a good book. I think he kind of goes on the theme too much a little bit, but it's about, that life, life is not about winning.
Yeah.
That we use these metaphors about winners and losers and enemies and, but life and, things that we really care about, relationships, it's not about winning,
Right.
And so but it's good. It's worthwhile reading. Yeah.
I like to use the example of the space race to illustrate that for organizations, because when Kennedy articulated the putting a man on the moon by the end of the 1960s, we hadn't invented the technology yet. I mean, it was such an incredible goal, and people like to talk about it as a vision, but the problem was that we hadn't articulated the purpose. So why were we doing it? And a lot of people thought it was to win the space race, and other people thought it was to start the space defense initiative to protect ourselves, getting satellites. And some people thought it was in the spirit of Star Trek, to boldly go where no one has gone before and explore space and new planets. And so what happened is, because we didn't understand why we were doing it, at the end, we did it, we got there, it was fabulous, and then we never recreated anything even close to that.
Right.
Yeah. And so it ended, which is really different from, if you think about the vision that Martin Luther King articulated of,
Yes.
with very clear images. It's a vision also, children, holding hands, singing together, joining, being, you know, I mean, he didn't articulate or even talk about the how it was going to happen, but it was the end result. And the brotherhood, unity, those kinds of images are still guide many of us.
Yes,
And
they do.
so that a true vision continues
Mhm.
and actually goes beyond the life of the person who articulated it. And so I like to use that as an example of the difference between a vision and a goal.
Yeah,
And I think the problem with, and this is at a personal level also, if your vision is about winning or beating the competition, then you're looking sideways. You're looking at, you know, you're measuring yourself against an outside standard. You're trying to get, just like the space race, and then you've got to set a new goal because you've got to find a new competition or some standard, outside standard. And it's not something that actually is fundamentally aligned with who you are, that you can reach to. And so back to your question about guidance for people now, is this is the time. We need to stop, take a breath, and go back to, who are we? What do we really care about? What do we stand for? What do we believe about what's right and good in this world and how we make a contribution to it?
yeah. No, that's wonderful. Well, that kind of leads into my next question in terms of, you know, how do you see leadership changing or people in leadership positions changing, or what advice would you give to them at this time?
Yeah, well, I two things. One is in terms of where they're going with the vision, and then the other is in terms of how they're interacting with people. And I think you have to, in terms of interacting with people, you cannot over communicate now.
Right, right.
And during any, I mean, communication is really important, but during times of big change, communication is absolutely essential. And if you wait until you have it all figured out to start communicating, it's too late.
Right.
So this is where, you know, and people say, well, if I don't know what I'm doing, people will see me as weak, and, you know, and they'll lose confidence in me as a leader. And I say, you don't have to say, I don't know what I'm doing, but you can say, here's what we're considering. Here's the challenges we're facing. Here's what we're analyzing. And you can also ask for input. What are some of your ideas? What are your thoughts? Because you may come up with ideas that you hadn't thought of that'll be really helpful. Plus, when people feel that they're contributing, they feel part of something, then they're going to be more committed, satisfied, and relieved, actually, during this time. In terms of the vision, I think almost everything is up for grabs. I am working with so many leaders now who are actually revisiting their fundamental business model. And I think that it's a very good thing to do. And even if you go back and say, you know, how is it that we see the world, and that what are our key strategies here, and do they still make sense? The answer could be yes, or it might be no. But I think this is the time to do it. It's like that same thing that I was just talking about, the trajectory. You're over here now. So it's not just about the goals. What's your business model? What are your strategies for getting there? I think some key industries really have to rethink this. And Airbnb just recently, it was a very interesting article in the Wall Street Journal that they, it wasn't just that they laid off a quarter of their workforce. And this is the thing, that was a decision, and a very hard decision that they made, because they revisited their business model. And they said, you know, we were shifting into supporting business travelers. And we don't think there's going to be as much business travel, but we do think that the people are going to be traveling in the United States or in their own countries. And our original model was, we provide a safe, warm, comfortable place to stay when you're on the road. We're going to shift back to refocusing on our core business model that we had been moving away from, and let go of these other strategies. Therefore, we need to redeploy people into our new business model that we're using now, and we're letting go of some of these new strategies that we were moving towards. So what's happening is people are looking at, business leaders are saying, well, I can't afford to keep everybody. They're keeping their business model, and then they're looking at how do we lay people off and continue to do the business we're doing or scale down our business. And I think that is a mistake. I think the thing that leaders need to be doing right now is revisiting their vision. What business are they really in, which is their purpose, and not their products and services, but why do they exist? What are the values, and what is the what does it look like when they're manifesting those?
That is a great example. So many industries. I mean, I think it's an opportunity. I mean, our church, we go to a traditional mainline church, and we were very resistant of online. Well, we immediately went to online, and now we are realizing a lot of the advantages. Mm-hmm. And so that's another example. Schools, colleges, I taught at a small college. We resisted online. Well, now we're online. And I think it will at least be part of the equation from now on. And Des Moines, I'm in Des Moines, Iowa, and we have one of the largest arts festivals in the country. And it's always rated like usually in the top 5 or something like that. And well, we have to cancel it this year. Mm-hmm. And some of these artists now, because I'm a pretty good shopper. I'm on their email list. Well, now I just, I got an email the other day from an artist in Colorado, and she said, well, I'm online. I'm finally online. So, again, I think people, to look for the silver linings and the opportunities. Right. Yeah, I think that's excellent.
Right. And also, I mean, Jann, what you point out is that as people have been experiencing technology in a different way, and I have to say, not the millennials, because they're already swimming in that water, but, the older folks, I'm going to say maybe 45 and older, are experiencing technology in a different way. And because of that, are able now and becoming, seeing the benefits of it in a different way, and seeing some particular value to it also. It's not just we're adjusting, but it's, oh my goodness, look at this. Isn't this interesting? We can learn this way. And it's, it's not as bad as I thought. In fact, there's actually some advantages. No, I certainly, you can go to work and wear your jammies. It's,
right.
It's like.
I'm in a Rotary Club, and we meet at 7 a.m. on Fridays, every Friday. But for me, I'd have to, get up, get dressed, and then it's not that far. It's like a 15-minute drive. But my attendance was spotty. Well, my attendance has been perfect now that we're online. Yeah. And so, it's very interesting to me. Well, we talked about leaders. What advice would you give to employees at all levels now, based on your work and the pandemic? I mean, like you talked about, organizations really should look at their business model and take advantage of opportunities and really rethink that, not just look at people as costs to be cut.
Yeah.
What do you think for people at all levels?
I think, it's a, I think a lot of people are those that are the ones that are getting cut, and I think it's devastating. And my heart goes out to employees right now. I think it's a very hard time, especially, I mean, this is going to be a very difficult time for a lot of people for a very long time. To the extent that you can do the same thing, rethink, who are you, what's important to you, what would it look like if you were having a satisfying, good life, and where are you now? And if there's skills that you need to learn in order to get there, look at that trajectory and rethink. I'm thinking no matter what the situation is, you don't have control over what happens to you, but you do have control over how you react to it. So, the first thing is if you're feeling devastated, allow yourself to feel that way. I mean, because it's real, your feelings are real, but don't get so caught in them that you can't move forward. And I think that there are, if there's education or something that you, as you set a new trajectory,
Yes.
take a serious look. And, and these things that look like obstacles, there may be other ways to achieve what it is that you want to achieve if you can't go down a particular road. That's why I'm saying don't get attached to the road. Think about where you want to go and then look for what are the opportunities to get there.
Yeah, no, that's excellent. I was reading a blog post the other day. I don't even know who wrote it, but it was a real quick summary of Lincoln's life. And if, again, if you want to, I mean, he had so many obstacles and encountered so many barriers, but yet was always able to kind of rise up. And it just a quick summary of all of the rejection and losses and health issues with people he loved. And, so anyway, I mean, I got done reading that and I'm like, oh, this is a really good reminder, Anyway, That's great. Well, I want to switch to a topic that's near and dear to my heart. And right now I'm focused on leadership legacy, and I'm working on a book, but I don't want to talk about that right now. But I would like your opinion on, how do you define legacy? When I say that word, what's it even mean to you? Or leadership legacy? I mean, what first comes to mind?
Well, I think for most people, legacy is what do you leave behind? Mm-hmm. And, how do you want to have impacted the world? I think of Steve Jobs, I want to make a ding in the world. And, so that's purpose, if you look at it, but it's also legacy. So I don't know, I'm thinking out loud a little bit, maybe.
Okay.
I don't know what the definition of legacy is. But I think for myself, I think about it a little differently. Okay. I think my legacy is something I'm living on an ongoing basis. I'm not building something to leave behind. I think one of the problems with leaving something behind is nothing lasts forever. And, people say, well, you worked on this great change project and all these great things happened in this company. And then the company got sold or the new leaders came in and it's not happening anymore. And I actually ended up with thinking about Camelot, and I used to look at the story of Camelot, King Arthur and the Round Table as a tragedy. Like he did this wonderful thing and then it all fell apart in the end and it was so sad. And but now I look at it differently. I look at, he did this wonderful thing and it touched so many people in different ways, and it rippled out into the people they touched and the people they touched. And whether the round table itself lasted or not isn't as important, because that's the structure, as all those ripples that went out over time. And that's the way I see about it in organizations also. I think that the difference that we make is the difference that matters, is the difference right now. Mm-hmm. Whether it's going to last forever. So the legacy might not be, for some people, it might be leaving the Eiffel Tower or some big important structure behind, or but I think we don't even know all the ripples that we've created.
Right.
And so for me, I think there's an opportunity to leave a legacy every single day in every single contact I make. And so I ask myself, when I'm done with this conversation, does this person feel enlarged or diminished? Mm-hmm. Because then my legacy is that that people know who they are. They have a deeper understanding of and they feel more empowered. And whether I'm actually facilitating that or I'm in the checkout line in the grocery store, if I get eye contact with the person and I look at them and they know that they are seen and I smile at them, I've acknowledged that they are important. And that, did that actually land? Did it make a ripple? You never know whether you've made a difference until you get feedback. And most of the time we don't get feedback. Right. So we can't assume that our legacy is measured by what the difference that we see. We can I mean, which is odd, me saying this in relation to talking about image of the end result and all this, when the legacy is something you're living every moment of every day, and you don't know specifically whether it's actually made a difference or not, but
Yeah.
it does make a difference in the long run.
I love that. And this is a little off topic, but I'll share a story since it kind of, what you said reminded me of this. So I took a faith-based social justice course. And the whole course was about compassion. We had to come up with a project. So I call them my homeless bags. But my bags. And so I take quart-size Ziploc bags and I put in toothpaste, toothbrush, hand sanitizer, little hand sanitizer, couple granola bars, and a couple dollars. And then I also stick in some of my postcards because I make postcards. So, and the postcards are, like it might say, do the right thing or be grateful, or, so they're often quote cards. And then I carry them in my car. And unfortunately, we're seeing more and more people on the corners. Well, then during this course, I read this article by Pope Francis, and I'm not Catholic, but I'm Presbyterian, but I love Pope Francis. And Pope Francis says, because it was an interview and somebody asked him, well, if you give homeless people money and they just go buy drugs or cigarettes, should you give them money? And he said, you know what? It's not about what they do with it. It's about giving it. And he said, and don't just give it to them, to the person, but look them in the eye and say something. So now I kind of stop traffic because I'm handing out through my window, I'm handing out the bag. But then I always say, if you don't need it, pass it forward. But I hope you find something that you like, And meanwhile, people are honking behind me. But it just made, I feel so good about it, And so anyway, that's just a little story. But
yeah.
So part of my legacy might be these bags. Well, can you share a story that comes to mind, either related to you or related to someone else when you think of legacy?
Well, I think just in terms of my own legacy, I think it's living it on a day-by-day basis.
And I think that's wonderful.
But the other part of the legacy, I think, is because I have two sons who are grown. I see it every day in them. I think, the people that you are closest with, whether you have children or whether it's friends or other family members, the way that they act in the world is actually a reflection of the impact that you've had on them. And
that's wonderful.
Yeah, but yeah. I guess it's like following the ripples. I love your story about the bags. It's inspiring, Jann. It's great.
Well, it's it brings joy. I get so much joy out of it, and then they're so like one guy I said he was cute, he was an older man and he had this sign, and his sign was something like, will you please help me or something? And so I gave him a bag and I said, can I take your picture? Because I use my own photos in my blog. So all of my photos in my blog are mine. And so he said, oh, absolutely, and he's standing there, he looks so happy. And so I thought I might be able to use that in some gratitude or something. But anyway, Jesse, I just love that. I love that. And, it's I said I make postcards, and I actually sell some just as a hobby to make, I want to break even so I can make more, because I also use some of my photographs in postcards. So I make quote cards and photo cards. And it warms your heart, because like my son, when he was studying abroad, from Spain, he said, oh, I got you something, Mom. This was in college. And I said, okay, and he said, and it was postcards, because he knows when I go on trips, sometimes I feel like the only thing I can afford are postcards. So, I was so touched by that, because he knows I like postcards. Anyway, that's probably more about me than you want to know. But
well, I think it's a great story and a great example of the ripple, exactly. And that the gratification of the ripple, I think it's important to say, I think I wasn't talking about that, is that when you're living your legacy, what comes back to you is the gratitude and the feelings of joy that you get from it.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, no, that's great. Well, how do you think people might change how they view legacy or their legacy, leaders' legacy during this pandemic?
Well, I hope that people don't look at it as how do I survive? I think we do need to survive, but if it's only about survival, we're going to continue to be in a reactive mode. And I think we do have an opportunity now to rethink, how are we in this world? I'm troubled by the divisions and the polarity that exists. And I think that human beings are not as divided if we can go back to what do we really care deeply about.
Yes.
And find that what actually connects us with each other instead of focusing on what divides us. Because I think for the most part, what divides us is different disagreements on the how, on the path, or how we're going to accomplish something. Like I said, Martin Luther King Jr. didn't articulate busing.
Right.
Or how we were going to create unity in this world. I think people that tend to be afraid of those things are in a fear state and looking at from a power position. But I think most people, can move out of that. Not all, but I think most people can. And I think I have just seen so many times that when given an opportunity, people actually connect, just like the story of you and this homeless man. I mean, how much did you really have in common with each other? And yet there was true connection and joy. And I think we have an opportunity. I don't know if it will happen. I'm hoping it does, because it certainly is here right now, to take a deep breath and look around and say, what do we have in common and what do we all care about right now? And then how do we lock arms together and move forward together? And
no, that's excellent. Well, Jessie, we're kind of coming to close here. So I always like to ask my guests, what else should I have asked you that our people need to know, either about, your work, leadership? We all have our favorite things to talk about, or sharing other stories. I mean, this is a chance for you to, if I didn't ask the question, for you to share it. You've really given me a lot to think about. In fact, I took notes. That often happens.
Oh, good. I'm one of the things about me is that I'm into actionable advice. I think that's one of the things I do in my blog. Not always. Some of them are think pieces, but usually I want people, when I said to feel empowered as a result of interacting with me, to have some ideas or things that they might do. So I guess I would leave it with maybe just some guidelines for how do you stay the course. I mean, assuming you've created a vision that's going to guide you, and without going into the detail of these three elements, assuming you read the book or go to my blog or something, or really understand what I mean by these three elements and go through the process that I described of creating it, then staying the course as you're moving forward, because we do get knocked off course. I've already talked about keeping your vision in mind when goal setting, and then resetting goals when you get knocked off course. Live with creative tension. I didn't talk about aligning processes and systems and practices, because you need to look at, like as an individual, if let's say you start out and say, I want to lose weight, and then you go to the why, because if you want to lose weight, that's a goal, and I achieve it, and then I've got to maintain it. So, why do I want to lose weight? Well, because I want to be healthy and I want to be able to live a long life or whatever. And so now I've got the purpose in there. And so now I need to eat less. I actually have to take action and do something. So so I need to think about how am I going to work this out that I eat less, but also without focusing on what I'm losing, because that's moving into the reactive state. So that's why I say take action. So go on the diet, but instead of focusing on the food you're not eating, focus on those blue jeans that you're going to be able to put on once you get to the weight that you want to be. So keep the visual, the image in mind, the positive image as you're moving forward. If you're, if for an organization or a team, if you have a vision that includes collaboration, and then you're only rewarding people on the basis of individual contribution, your system is set up for competition, but the vision is around collaboration. So you've got to look at, what are your processes, practices, and how do they line up with and support you getting where you want to go, or you're going to end up at cross purposes. And then the other thing I would say is take the first step. You're just not going to see the whole path. Keep the vision in mind, see your first step, take the step, and then the next steps will become, it's not like, oh, well, don't plan. Go ahead and plan. I think that's important, but be willing to adjust your plans, but don't take forever. I think of it as flying and building the airplane at the same time. You can't wait until the whole thing is planned out and designed before you take action. As you become clear about the vision, take a step.
Yeah. I think that's great advice. You've shared so much with us that I thought I'd share one thing, and this might not be new, but I got it from higher education. So, but it's something you might find interesting. But when I'm talking about vision with organizations, I will often come in and I'll dump puzzle pieces on the various tables. And then in groups, I say to people, they're all sitting. So put the puzzle together. Or the puzzle pieces will be on the table. And then I'll say, all right, put the puzzle pieces together. So they're all working on it, and of course, none of it makes sense, right? But they don't know that at the beginning. They think it's each individual little puzzle.
That's great.
So yeah, and so then I say, all right, well, what's the problem? What would make this easier? Well, where are the borders, where are the borders? Or, and finally we get around to, well, what's the picture on the cover? And I said, that's your role as a leader, to paint the picture on the cover. You've got to articulate it. You've got to describe it. You can't say it once, So when people see the picture on the cover, they know how the pieces fit together.
Well.
And so go ahead and use it because you've shared so much with me. But
thank you, Jann.
All of a sudden people are like, oh, I get it, and then they're like, this isn't really one, and I go, no, it's all, but, and the borders, when I say the border or the corners, then I say, well, those are roles and responsibilities, and these pieces could be departments, they could be people, they could be divisions.
Right.
The whole puzzle, yeah. So anyway, well,
excellent, thank you, I love it. And I could see you taking like one of your pictures and turning it into a puzzle.
Good, I could do that. That's interesting. Well, Jessie, thank you so much, and you've been wonderful. Thank you for participating.
Enjoyable.
And I always say, let's make the rest of life the best of life, so may the rest be the best for you.
Thank you very much, Jann.
Thank you very much.